Welcome to the Journey 2020. I'm Charles Morris. Happy to be here with you coming off the weekend. As you know, we come to you every Monday at 7 p.m. We've been around since 2013. Gentleman by the name of Dr. John Robertson, who I work very closely with, who I actually met through Dr. Charles English, who I was very close to for many years, and he passed away some years ago. And the funny thing is that for those who know me know that I do a youth summit that I started many years ago. And because of what I do, I've had summits and topics on many different things when it comes to our community and youth. And you speak of a clinical psychologist, Dr. Charles English, who was well known in the area. I had a summit that Saturday, and Dr. English was one of my panelists that Saturday for my youth summit. And it's so funny because at the time, when it was time to eat lunch, I said, Dr. English, come on and have lunch with us. He said, well, no, I had kind of late breakfast. Da, da, da. I said, come on. So he said, cool. Okay, I'll go and I'll eat lunch. So he came and he ate lunch with us. And then, for those who know me, knows that I love to go fishing. So after church, for I used to go fishing every Sunday after church. And so here it is, Saturday, I have my summit. Sunday is fishing. Then my phone rings. It's Dr. Robinson, who came up with the show, another clinical psychologist. And he said, Charles, Dr. English has passed away. And I'm like, I just saw him yesterday. He was at my summit. And no, he, he passed away this morning. So I say all of that to say that the gentleman who I met from Charles English and Dr. John Robinson, clinical psychologist, actually started this show back in 2013 in the summer. And Dr. Robinson came to me and I said, is this a good thing? He said, Charles, I'm so busy right now that I can't do the show. And my wife is giving me a hard time by spending this time with you, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And so when I say, Dr., in a joking way, I say to Dr. Robinson, this is a good thing that you're so busy, which brings us up to today's show. And it's about mental health. And in this country, we don't do well. We don't handle mental health well at all. And it's such a prominent part of our culture and our society. And you can tell through law enforcement, um, anything to do, and I'm just kind of picking them out because they're easy. But when your method of dealing with people, and I understand it's difficult, it's hard based on where you are and what you're doing. But in our culture and our society, when you run across somebody, it's easy to give them a pill, or it's easy to give them drugs. It's easy to tase them. It's easy to put them in handcuffs. It's easy to throw them down on the ground and use force when you don't have the skills or the heart and the compassion to know how to do your job. So the easy way out, when you don't have a concern, guess what I do? I just tase this little girl. I just tase this little boy. I just do these little things because you don't have coping skills. And one of my closest friends that I grew up with, my mentor, uh, those who know me and have seen me with him, and he would hate me talking about him, but that's just how he is. He was a police officer and retired out of New York City, and he trained well over 50,000 police officers, and talking about how he just tried to teach some of these young guys coming in that that person standing in front of you is a human being too. And I'm going on, but I give you an example. The young cop, many of them, he said, well, he didn't comply. And he's trying to get them to understand. He said, well, he didn't comply because I'm going to ask you a question. How would you respond when you just embarrassed this man in front of his wife, his kids, and his girlfriend just so you on your power trip versus you talking to this person like he's a human being and stop with the power trip? So your inability to have compassion and knowing how to deal with individuals, you just want to do it like this because your ego is superseding everything. So the inability to know how to deal with people and talk with people, and not saying that you don't run into difficulties, but your first move is to do the power play. And so I say all of that to say, especially nowadays, and I'm going to bring in somebody who I talk to a lot, and she's been on the show on numerous occasions, and we have these conversations all the time because of the times that we're in. And I want to bring in, I call her the captain, and for those who watch us on the Pastor's Roundtable, she talks about what it's like working in the environment. So I'm going to have her come in real quick. And how you doing, Miss Perkins?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay. Now I covered a lot just then. I covered a lot. And won't you quickly tell us about where you work, real quick, so we can, kind of help people understand why we're covering mental health and some of the challenges that we have in our culture and our society.
Yes, so I work at a charter high school. It's called Workforce Advantage Academy in the Orange County community. And it is a career academy. We really have upperclassmen from ages 16, juniors and seniors, so ages 16 up to 22. And our goal is to provide, besides the academics and help them graduate, life skills as well. But it is an alternative school. So we have various personalities, and it's certainly many of them have struggled in some of the traditional schools. And they come to us for a variety of reasons, whether it's academics, some behavior issues, some want a small classroom environment. Many of them want to work, and and we're bringing kids in from all across the county. So you have this mixture of personalities and in home environments, and just value systems. So it is quite interesting, and it's a daily challenge, but I'm thankful to have been there 9 years and hoping to make a difference in the lives of some of these young adults.
Okay, which brings us up to we were having a conversation because we're always talking. Because we talk about this all the time, and we're always talking about some of the daily challenges that you face or something that may happen in the news. It may not be at your school, it could be somewhere else, but it's still part of your daily challenges of who we are now in our culture, in our society. And then when you hear what you hear, and I even ask you this now, I ask you this, I said, well, it sounds like you got some challenges where you are. And are you able to cope and deal with this part of what some of the problems are? Is that these kids and the parents got some challenges in the standpoint of like, well, maybe there's the breakdown. They're lashing out, they cussing at you. I was there not too long ago. They're videotaping, and we had to stop videotaping because there was a young girl, a young lady, out in the hall, and she was going off, and she used
Mhm.
some four-letter words and called somebody a fat blah 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 blah, so on and so forth. And so because it's a constant conversation, not all the time. So then I asked you about that, and then you said, well, we do have someone or some of us that are able to take the situation and bring in the mental health counselor, which I'm going to let you introduce, and you help the people understand the component of that when it comes to the school.
Okay, and I'll keep this brief. So, yes, of course, let me just say this briefly. Maybe in the last couple of years, the area or the topic of mental health has really been elevated in the school system, which has been wonderful. So, teachers and administrators, we had to go through mandatory training. And the person I'm going to introduce is Leslie Odom, was one of our trainers coming in. And so just I think that was a great start, just raising the awareness of it. And even like beyond our school system too, is getting a national, worldwide, I guess, awareness of, the importance of mental health, because you have like a Simone Biles and some other high profile people, Taraji Henson and others who are talking about it now. But as far as in our school environment, getting that training, talking about it, and now we have mandatory training for our students. I think it's like 5 hours a year. And so talking about the various mental health. And then Miss Odom, she was coming on our campus. We had her like one day a week, but now we have her twice a week. And she actually is another individual as well that comes on. And so the need is the need has always been there, but now it's like it's okay. Or I won't say, hopefully people are finding it that it's okay that if you need to go talk to someone, that it can help you, and it's not this taboo that's been in our community, especially I would say in the minority community. We have different cultures at our school, and I'm just really thankful because just I've noticed a great improvement having someone on campus who can help, talk to these students, de-escalate some of these situations, and she has been a godsend. So I'm happy to introduce Miss Leslie Odom, and she can share more of her background, but she's been doing this a long time, and she has also some of her own um, mental health, or I guess, initiatives that she's working with as well. So, but she could certainly share a little bit more. But she has truly made a big impact on our campus. So,
Okay. Okay. Well, that takes us to it. So, welcome to the Journey 2020. Thank you for taking the time to come on the show. And it's almost like, well, there's so many places that we can start. Well, first of all, I want you to introduce yourself and kind of give us a little background because uh, I, when I look at you, I have to see a little halo over your head because because of what you do and where you are. So kind of give us a little background and introduce us and tell us who you are.
So, again, my name is Leslie Odom, and I am the founder of Full Circle Florida. We have been around since 2014. We are a 501c3, and our mission is to break the cycle of intergenerational adverse childhood experiences through mental health education, advocacy, and training. So, we eat mental health. We educate, we advocate, and we train. And so today, I am excited because this is exactly where I want to be. And lots of folks say, well, why would you want to be in those communities? Because I feel that that's where I've been sent. That is my calling. That is my purpose. And if I could do it all over again, I would be exactly where I am today, helping families in my community and supporting children. And so that's the goal. So I will go anywhere on any podcast to share the importance of mental health and spread some awareness so we can begin and also will continue to tear down the stigma of mental health in our community. Yep.
Well, um, speaking of mental health and the challenges that we face in our culture and our society now, it's almost like where do you start? I mean, we're talking about there at the schools period, all across the country, and for years and years now, we talk about where are we as a culture, the challenges that is faced in our society and schools every day, which is so different. And it's almost like we just continue to fail. I was just on the phone, and I don't know if you remember this, Miss Perkin. I think you asked me the question, and I was talking with Haki Nkrumah, and you said, "Well, when did this thing started to break down?" And I don't know if you remember the answer to that question because I went to him because he's been doing this for such a long time, and I'm talking about when did it started to shift from the standpoint that the power of the parent was starting to be taken away, and now all of a
Mm.
sudden where kids started acting out and being disrespectful, talking back, talking to the teachers, and so on and so forth. Do you remember the answer that he gave us?
Hmm. I remember us having that conversation, but I don't, I don't remember. So I don't, I don't. So
Remember,
let me
it was
just not.
he said in the late 80s, early 90s. He
Okay.
said that's when it really started to shift. And when you think about it, because we always have this conversation because we have lost the village, and that's supposed to be the foundation of our existence and our purpose. But the losing the village and the support of the village, because we all have to be in this together for the benefit of us all. And so that started to break down. But can either of you speak on what are some of the most difficult challenges that you face dealing with these kids in school now?
Uh,
And I'll say this right here. Ment- Mentoring and been working with kids for a long time. And I've been saying this for over 25 years or so. I say, if you want to understand, follow them home. Not all the time, but follow them home and see who opens the door for them. And if you start there, you go like, oh, I I I better understand. So I just throw that out there.
um, I'll just quickly start. So your question was some of the challenges, right, that we deal with. Is
Right.
that true? So at the beginning of the school year, to me, it's the most challenging because you don't know who your students are quite at that point. And we do get documentation. It's called IEPs, individual education plans, for some students, maybe about 20% of our students. So if we have 250 students, maybe 50 of them have these plans, which really start in elementary school, and it's documentation of maybe some special accommodations that we need to provide to students, such as maybe they have some learning disabilities, can be on the spectrum, hearing disabilities, physical, emotional disabilities, almost, or challenges, maybe not disabilities, but some challenges. So again, they get special accommodations where we have to spend more time with them, in the teaching and the lecturing, or even in the testing environment, or just whatever that need is. And then once or twice a year, they meet with professionals or counselors, and this is documented and written up in this file, and it follows them throughout their educational journey. So by the time we get them in 11th and 12th grade, they are who they are, right? And so um, not all kids get these IEPs, unfortunately. So some of them have some special accommodations that are needed, or maybe has some traumatic search situations, and there's no documentation, so we don't even realize what that history is. So just these first couple of months trying to understand, and then trying to see how we can help them. And so that's the challenge to me in the beginning, just trying to see how can I connect and relate and help that student. I don't believe students wake up to have a bad day. So when we have some of them walk through our doors and already having a meltdown, or they're out of uniform, and they get sent to me because I have clothing, we can put them in, they're in a a bad mood or funk, or they've already cursed out a couple of people. I think on our part it's important that we have the training, at least to stay calm and just and listen and understand and not react personally. And this is where, Miss Odom has helped, just listening, because I think they just need to vent and get it out. But then you may have some teachers who maybe pull a power play in their room or something, and not trying to understand and listen. So the challenge is trying to understand who that student is, as you say, treat them like a human. And I don't believe they wake up to have a bad day. So I'm just trying to figure out what may have triggered it and how I can defuse it. And again, and then if I can, I certainly, if Miss Odom's on campus or I refer, I give her names, quite a bit for students who have had some challenges, because they need help.
Well, I'm gonna throw her a loaded question. It's just loaded, and that's this right here. Based on the times, um, and what's truly going on in our culture and our society, and the breakdown of the family, the village, and all of that. And I'm just asking the question: can it also be a combination of not being equipped, and I'm talking about some of the teachers, because and I say it because listening to you talk, this is a calling for you. And this is what I say, because when you're an educator, that's a calling. There's a lot of teachers that are out there that are in that position, and they're not called to do so. And you know the ones that are called. And when you go where you go and you do what you do, and you just spoke and I heard it, you are called to go and do what you're doing. It's because it's in here, and you being lit. And and I'm saying it. You being led spiritually. I can hear it. I can feel it. And so when you being called and you doing what you being called to do, there's a difference. And I'm not saying anything but other than there's a difference. And so my question that I'm asking, can you speak into the times that we're in now, the challenges that we face, but also whether or not the breakdown and the family and the mental um, illness that is going on, that is prevalent, but we don't know what that is, not recognizing it, but also in the environment that, just like a lot of police officers, they not equipped. They just do what they do the way that they do, and they're going on their feelings and their emotions, and they're making decisions just based on how they feel, not being able to recognize and do what is right in that situation. Not saying that it's easy, but there's a difference when you have a compassion and a better understanding. So I say I'm going to throw you something. So however you want to answer that, and you can kind of tell us where we are and what's going on.
Okay. So thank you for the question. Um, I just want to say that I can't speak on behalf of what the school is doing. I want to show up in this space today representing Full Circle Florida and what we do: educate, advocate, and train. And so to answer your question about, the village and approaching situations through a lens of compassion and mental health or awareness, I say that I have a very deep compassion for educators because I wake up to hear trauma. They wake up to educate. And so our lens is totally different. What we're called to do is totally different. And so I get it. If someone were to put me in a classroom, I would definitely be out of my field, and we would probably be singing all day and playing games because that is just not what I do in regards to math, science, literature, those subjects. My realm is mental health, and so I totally get it, if an individual doesn't have that skill set. However, Miss Perkins spoke on it earlier about the education information being out there, the trainings being out there, and it being a requirement now. And we all understand that, just because it's a requirement doesn't necessarily mean that we implement the information that we receive.
Mm.
So I think that is that's two of the questions. It is it your question was loaded, so I want to make sure that I'm answering all of them. In response to, um, you made a statement earlier regarding, you follow the child home, and so and we'll see, where the challenge is. I believe that it's an opportunity to educate the parent and provide information, because a lot of parents and a lot of uh, caregivers are out here parenting and they're traumatized. And so we don't let individuals drink and drive. And so to be parenting and trying to do the best, we can, because I'm a parent too, while traumatized is daunting, like it's difficult in itself. And so some successes may look different. I was able to send my child to college. However, a success in another family may look like getting them out the door to go to school. And so it's going to look different. And I believe in meeting families and children where they are. And back to that crucial piece of education and information, but we must have access to it, and we must have access to it sooner rather than later. So it is my fundamental belief that when we support parents, we protect all children.
Oh, well, let me ask you. This is another loaded question. Is what? Well, not loaded question, but and Ms. Perkins, we've talked about this as well on many occasions, and we're talking about the times that we're in now. So the culture and where we are, and we now are into the social media, and that we no
Mm.
longer are having social skills. We're isolated, and then the lack of social skills also comes with the lack of dealing with conflict. I think the two go hand in hand. So we don't have the social skills starting at a young age, and now it plays over into all the things that we're talking about. So can either one of you can talk about that and how now we're 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 getting worse and worse and worse in the isolation, which takes and then we're comfortable in it. We're comfortable, like we're comfortable. Something as simple as not knowing our neighbors. We're comfortable, um, and I'm stretching it, but this is what I mean. We're more apt to take out the our phones and videotape a situation versus getting involved and helping. Because I'm trying to relate to there's some teenagers. This happened a few years ago, right here in Orlando. A gentleman is in the lake drowning, and the kids take out their phones to videotape the man drowning versus taking the initiative to try to help the guy. So I'm saying
Mm.
the lack of the social skills, and which plays into our inability to know how to deal with conflict, and it just seems to be normal to be able to lash out and be disrespectful. It's like the norm, which goes back into what we're talking about. So who wants to start with that one?
I'll defer to Miss Odom.
Okay. I'm like, you want to take this one? Yes, I believe like COVID did a number on us,
Hmm.
just where we were as a society, as a culture. And then to have, have COVID on top of that, it really set us back. And we're still dealing with the implications from COVID. We have challenges with, having individuals step up and have those face to face conversations. However, it's everything is an opportunity. And so just to create more opportunities for individuals to meet face to face and have those conversations. Like, but I have to go back to my belief, it starts in the home. And so if we, as a culture, can get to the home and get to the parents, the ones that, back in the day, they said home training, you either have it or you don't. Or, if you did something out of line, it was, did you get home training, or you don't have any, or what have you. So back to that, I believe, empowering those parents and empowering even myself. I'm in it. Our oldest son is 28 and the youngest one is 11. So I've been parenting across the generations. So I see the difference. And so being able to have those opportunities where even myself take the information and say, ask the questions, not tell me something about your day. Tell me how your day was. So they even get comfortable in the home. My son gets comfortable in the home, having conversations and having dialogue and sharing his thoughts. And sometimes I disagree on purpose just to have him, have a rebuttal or say, why he doesn't agree or why he feels so strongly about his position. And so back to the basics, it starts in the home and creating opportunities in the home and then also in the community to test it out, to get some training about having face-to-face conversations, because online is so different. You type a few things and no one ever sees your face. So kind of pulling back from that, I tell my boys, pick up the phone, call me, let's have a conversation about it. And so we as parents, we as adults, um, and then also challenging ourselves to have those conversations, because we too were in COVID. And it's like, yeah, send me an email, text me.
Mhm. Yeah,
Hmm. Oh,
well,
wow.
that's what I'm. Is there something that you want to add to this, Miss?
Sure. Well, I just wanted to speak a little bit too on the social media piece. Yes, and then I agree. COVID absolutely set, I think, many of our customers, we call it our students, population back, went online, and many of them just really stop attending school. So that's what we're dealing with. Whenever I see a student with a low grade point average, I don't assume that that student is incapable. My first thought is what happened in this along this journey, because normally low grade point average equates to probably not going to school, and which probably goes back into the home. So when we have like parent teacher conferences, again, that's important. One of our administrators always say, let's bring the parent into this conversation. He never wants it to be between like myself and the student. No, let's bring in the parent so that we can make sure that we have the support and perspective that we need, because we don't always get correct information from our students either. And then we have parents telling us, well, I didn't know my child was, not attending school or doing this. But the social media piece, I think it has magnified some of mental health challenges. And again, I'm not trained, but now it used to be on television, or to be seen, you had to be on major networks, ABC, NBC, CBS, what have you. Now you can just pick up your phone and put yourself out there in social media land. So people want, it seemed like a lot of our young adults want to be seen and known, and they're videotaping themselves in all types of situations and putting themselves out there to be accepted, or maybe liked, or popular, or whatever it is. And it's I think it's an addiction to some extent, because it's one of our number one challenges in the school, with them being on their phones and their social media. And you talk about the social skills. Now that Orange County has mandated no phones, they're supposed to be turned off and in their backpack. That has been our number one challenge this year, trying to really enforce that. And I, I try to have conversations with the students and say, let's go back old school. Let's just sit and talk to one another, instead of having you sitting next to each other with phones, and not having conversations. So we're trying to relearn some old school values and just have conversations. And it's been a big adjustment. It has been a huge adjustment without having those phones. Many of them feel very lost, very handicapped, and they're trying to figure out, what do I do now? I don't have a phone during the day. So yeah, I think it's that's been a challenge with the social media, and then certainly no phones, with at least with in the classroom during the day. And I'll just say this: we look. we do allow them to have them at lunch, and I tell you, sometimes it's so quiet because they're all on their phones at lunch instead of talking to each other.
Well,
So,
that was what I was talking about,
mhm,
where I was speaking earlier about how we have evolved into the inability to be able to socialize with each other, and we're isolating. And the 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 bigger picture and seeing what is happening to us as a whole, um, there's a major drawback to that, and it's only going to get worse. And the challenges is not only to the students, but us as a culture, and who we are and what we are becoming. So if the norm, um, and I'm going to give you an example, and we kind of talk about this. I'm kind of go off beat for a minute, but it's still the same thing. It's weird to me that our culture and who we are now, that we will put our little headsets on, and then we are no longer part of the world. Our world is right there as we walk, and we're on the phone, or whatever we're looking at on the internet, and we're good with that. So here you are, you're walking around. It could be a place that is not safe, and that's one of the things that we try to teach in self-awareness, that you sow into your phone, that you now have walked into a situation that you're not even aware of, and somebody come and snatch you, harm you, and something like that, because you're so focused on whatever that is. And I felt so bad when I tell you this story was, and you can Google it if you want to, but maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, this young girl walked right in front of a train. Now you know this train had to be blowing its horn, train, you know, and she's just on her phone and walked right in front of the train. Now, in addition to that, right there, as sad as it is, this girl lost her life, all of that, and the guy who evidently was driving the train got to feel that for the rest of his life. But it's something is where the girl walked in front of a train. And so,
mhm,
and that's what I was saying about from the mental standpoint of what are we evolving into, where we're getting away from the village overall, we're comfortable, and we take pride in not knowing each other, and it's none of your business. And I say this all the time, coming from where I came from. Now it's just like I'm in the grocery line, I'm at Walmart or in a store, and you see the little baby and the cute little baby, and the baby is saying something to you, and you want to like kind of play back, but you kind of like, I don't know if I say something to this kid, is the parents gonna like turn around, you literally, and cuss you out or say, hey, so you don't know, so you hesitant just to even speak to the child. So that's where we are now. But from the clinical part of it, the mental part of it, it's just like, what do you? I mean, and I'll say this, and I put it like this: it is written that we are going to, and I'm talking biblically, what we're coming into. But overall, what can we do to try to combat this in some kind of way? I don't know. I mean, that's just like, remember, Miss Perkins, when I was talking about one of the workshops, and you came up with the idea of the workshop. And I said, that's a great idea for the workshop. But I'm saying, I don't know how to, I mean, we can bring in experts, and I don't know if you remember the conversation. You remember the conversation? Okay,
I do.
tell us the workshop that and I was like, I don't know. But then when I talked to a couple of people, they told me this, tell me that, because I'm like, this thing is so powerful. Tell us the workshop that you would like to do. And as a matter of fact,
Mm.
we may have the person here that can do the workshop. Yeah, but go ahead.
And I do remember the conversation. So, and we talked about so many things, but I think it was about just even. having understanding, like first mental understanding mental awareness, mental illness, really speaking to it, where hopefully the more we talk about it, it isn't this stigma. You mentioned that, earlier, Leslie, that it's, having the conversations around it, and then understanding some of the signs, and then what are some things we can do, whether as parents or educators or whatever field we're in, that when we recognize maybe some of these symptoms, what are some steps to take, but that just that it's a safe environment to even talk about it, that if someone is bipolar or has suffer from depression or schizophrenia or whatever, or has some type of traumatic injury, that it's okay. And and how do you handle it? It's okay to talk about it versus isolation. So, you mentioned about just having conversations with your sons and things like that. But since this is your field, what are some other things do you recommend? Under your expertise.
So yes, so I appreciate the question. And so yes, I believe that there is cure in conversations and healing in community. And so other things that we can do aside from conversations, which are very, very, I would say at the top of my list as far as strategy, is creating a space where those conversations can take place, and not filling the space with our opinions or and I say our, like, caregivers, parents, educators, supporters, whomever, just to hear from the generations, the young people today, because the generation is very, very different from when I came up, when I raised my older children. It's very, very different. So creating that space, and then also recognizing that whatever the baseline is for that individual. So if they're an early riser and they're not rising early, or maybe if they, like to nap and they're not napping, they're not eating, individuals. So this could be for adults and children alike. And so anything that is away from their baseline, their norm, and being that we recognize those things and that we have an awareness that we're paying attention. And a lot of time, well, I heard you say, Miss Perkins, that some of the students, well, not students, but some individuals may want to go to social media because they may have a feeling of needing to be seen, needing to be heard. So that may be a way for them to cope with life. If they don't have anyone to talk to, they may not have an audience or what have you. So that
Mhm.
may be a coping skill, whether it be healthy or unhealthy. However, creating that opportunity for us as adults to see young people, or us as adults to see each other. So, Miss Perkins, if you see me and I usually have on two earrings, or maybe, I'm usually put together and I'm not. And you say, "Hey, Leslie, like, what's going on with you? Is everything okay? Is there something? How can I help you?" So
Mhm.
recognizing that even in our colleagues, our family members, and so that is another strategy. And so once we are able to open that door to say, "I'm here for you if you need to talk," or "How can I help you?" Then another strategy is to hold the space and kind of listen back to that conversational piece. And if we feel in our intuition will always lead us in the right direction, to get help and reach out and say, "Hey, if you have insurance, or if you don't have insurance, let me just walk you over, or let me connect you to someone, or let me call a couple of places with you," to be able to do it with that individual. Because sometimes it's like, "Oh, yeah, well, just call. There's some places out there that have counseling." But if we just, kind of push away and not hold the hand, some folks need that additional support to be able to connect with the services. So we want to make sure that we're connecting an individual, whether it be our family members, children, whomever, that we are connecting them like a tangible thing, because it's so easy to get lost and just say, "Oh, you need this or that." go ahead. There's a whole bunch of places out there, let me know if you need
Mm,
something. Like I do not like that phrase. Let me know if you need something.
mm,
I'm here. I'm available. I'm open. I'm going to
yeah.
call you.
Oh,
Uh,
I want to speak. I'm sorry if I can just respond to that. So I just want to, your point about just the awareness of if something changed with them, like their baseline. And I think that's so important because paying attention to the students, I really try really hard to do that. And especially like students are really quiet. And I make it a point not only pay attention, I go talk to them to find out. And I shared with you recently, one of our students, and he just poured into me, and then of course I came to you, and sometimes the roadblock, unfortunately, if they're under 18, I know we got to get a parental consent, and trying to just get the, as you said, that parent involved. And again, some of them are from different cultures, and so even just that challenge sometimes, or maybe they don't speak the language, or that's not their culture, like nope, we don't deal with mental illness or what have you. You have some of those obstacles. But if nothing else, at least I know I can sit and listen and try to, offer some compassion. I think many times people just want to be heard. And again, some of them really, do need to be connected on with some services, but at a minimum, I can listen at a minimum, and try to be compassionate. And hopefully they feel I'm a safe place for them to go to. And I know also we have sometimes students when they have their moments, they have a teacher they connect with, and they can go to that teacher to kind of calm down and de-escalate what's on. So and I just want to give just two quick examples. We had a student at the beginning of the year just acting out and cursing out admin and walking off campus. And I had the student last year, and I just said, "Come on, I just sat and talked with him, and I'm like, what's going on?" I'm like, and he shared, and I'm like, "What's the goal?" So as like graduation, so every time I see him, I'm like, "What's the goal?" And I fist bump him, graduation, trying to keep him focused. Yesterday, I showed him his report card. He had all A's and B's, except with his timesheets. But he immediately came to my desk, said, "Can I call my mom?" And by the way, this student even had run away. Called his mom, went down all his grades, was so proud it almost made me cry because I'm like, I know that's what he wants, and I know now this young man he's gonna stay on track because he saw he can do it. And I tell him, like, you can't be cursing out the teachers, dude. And just I connect with him every time I see him, and I'm like, what's the goal? And graduation. And so I think we can do things like that. I don't have a whole lot of training, but it's just, this is a human, as you said, Charles, earlier. And it's somebody who I know is struggling, trying to figure this out, at 16, 17, 18. We have adults still trying to figure things out at 40 and 50. So I just wanted to mention that example. And then even Charles, when I went to Hampton University in June, that young man, who we had a student, he was graduate of Hampton University, 22, 23, working with us at a conference. And he had a meltdown, start boo-hooing, crying. And, I just gave him a hug, and I was only with him for a week. But he asked, could he stay in touch with me and talk to someone? And I actually connected him to Mr. Morris because as a kind of a mentor, because, here I just listened to him, and he needed someone, and he was trying to get services, and he was upset because his services was denied for whatever reason, and this and that. So I mean, it's around us. It's around us. The people need support and help. And if we can just even show some compassion and listen, I think we can help, solve some of these, challenges and meltdowns that we deal with daily.
you know,
So,
you made me think of something, and I shared with you that with Dr. John Robinson, the gentleman who came up with this show back in 2013, and who I've been working with for over 20 years. one of his assistants out of his office um, came to me, and I told you that she came to me, and for a period of about maybe 8 months, so that on a Friday, she said, "Charles, I want you to come in, and I have some of my clients." And it was private. It wasn't recorded, but we was on a Zoom call, and her clients was because she thought it would be a good idea, and I brought in maybe four other of my friends, um, just from a female perspective of some wisdom to try to help some of these because it was different ages. Some was in their 20s, some was in their 30s, and some was in their 40s of her clientele, and so it was just a gathering. And when I hear what I hear, and I would always say this among the group because each one would tell their stories and their challenges. And I would always say it is so amazing the stuff we have to come up out of. Because when somebody hears somebody else's story and then they go like, wow, and then you hear somebody else's story, they're different but yet the same. And then you come from so much dysfunction, you wonder how you're able to function. And that is what is so amazing to me. And
Mhm.
that's what I meant a lot of times that you go home and you see the environment, and nothing is perfect. And there's always something in the challenges, but some of the challenges is great further than others. And when I work with Restore Hope Orlando over there on Westmoreland and in the Paramore Cayley area, and this after school program that had been there for over 20 plus years and that's helping the community out. And one of my mentors, who I was talking about, who was a police officer, who is now out of New York, who was here, who has this gift, that who started working there with the after school kids, and the blessing that he brought through his wisdom and his patience. And people have no idea what these little kids have to go through from being in that neighborhood, from the the drugs and just people just trying to survive. And so I,
Mhm.
I, I make this statement of people just trying to survive, going on the skills that they only know and that they've been given, and to hear what we have to come up out of, and to try to find some normalcy somewhere in our culture and our society. And I would be on that group sometime and just listening, or just hear what you have to say or what anybody have to say, or coming from my own neighborhood, knowing what we have to come up out of to try to blossom and become law abiding citizens. Sometimes it is absolutely amazing the things that God do within us so we can try to survive and make it through life, because we don't know the stories and the stuff that's in us to say like, wow, we don't know about the abuse. And I was telling Miss Perkins, um, that, and I worked with Monica May, been working with her for years and years and years and years, and she has been part of my event and a few times on separate occasions where she's talking to the young ladies. She's talking to the young ladies. That's her thing. And I've seen her do this more than once or twice on separate occasions, and she's talking about abuse. And right in the middle, she'll go, she'll tell one of her staff members, I want you to take this girl and take them over in the other room, because she's standing there talking in the middle, and she's picking out these girls that's being abused. I don't know how she does it. And she'll come back and she said, Charles, this girl was this girl was that. And for sure, every time these girls that is 12, 14, 16 years old, living in this environment of constant abuse in so many ways, that she's able to detect it right in the middle of her doing what she's able to do, it's just amazing. Again, I say that the stuff that we have to come up out of, and I know you being a counselor see so many different things. And as a matter of fact, and I'll say, and not that you have to answer this.
Mhm.
Um, the gentleman that I work with, his name is Moses. Dr. Robinson, Kathy, who is also the counselor who I was talking about, who was on it Friday night. Between the three of them, because they all know each other, I've been trying to do this show for the past maybe 5 years, and they all agree, but I haven't been able to do it. It's like, where do you go? Who do you talk to? Because you carry a heavy load. Moses, who was sent up to the Jersey when that guy went up there and shot up that grocery store, and he said, Charles, I was up there for 2 weeks, but I had to come home because I couldn't take it no more. Because he said it was mentally and emotionally. So I asked him, I said, let's do the show. Oh, that'll be a good show. So where do you go? Who do you talk to? How do you handle all of this stuff that's put on you? Now, I'm not going to ask you to answer that question, but for
But I
you,
want to.
okay, okay, good, good.
I want to. I feel like it's so important for individuals to know because as I'm a pusher of mental health. I am the biggest advocate. And so if I'm sharing to say, "Hey, come on, engage in counseling and there's no stigma behind it," then I myself, the therapist needs a therapist. And so when individuals come to counseling, I feel like that is one of the questions that they should ask. Do you have a therapist? And if the answer is no, run.
Oh, you. Oh, that's good.
Yes. So the therapist does need a therapist, and my relationship with God first and foremost. However,
Mm.
I definitely believe that therapists need a therapist, and that's the only way. And so we have to believe in this thing that we call mental health, and believe that it helps and it works, and it does. And so I feel like it gives me an opportunity to be vulnerable, to put myself in the position of a client so I understand. And it also helps talking to someone else. It helps me, tremendously to talk to God in my relationship with God. But also, He's given us things to access, to take advantage of, and through individuals. And so, yes, definitely. And so, if your therapist, I always say it, if your therapist does not have a therapist, please do run and see if there are other alternatives out there because I that's one of my beliefs.
Yeah, it's
Can I ask Leslie a question?
sure, sure.
So, gosh, I hope I didn't lose my question. So there can be some disparities between financial support for mental health. So I'm not sure how I want to ask this, but what if you have money, you can go to a therapist or see a psychologist or psychiatrist or whatever's needed. So for those who don't have the money, and I know, are there programs? I know there are programs out there that you're involved in, but others, what is the best path for them to get some type of health? And are there enough services out there to help those who may not have the financial means?
So yes, there are services. Along with what I do, I find it impossible not to do case management when I do offer counseling as well. Sometimes the case management comes before to uh, find, sign individuals up for different programs or, support them or identify different supports that they may need. Charles talked a little bit about survival, being in survival mode. And so we have to, take care of those basic needs and identify programs. And sometimes that looks like finding insurance and finding programs that accept clients without insurance or cash payments. But there are, and if an individual approaches me and they say I'm in need of support, I don't turn them away. I kind of walk them through the process of connecting them with the service that they need. And so the mayor had, I think it was last year, earlier this year, had um, his address, and he mentioned, or there was a report, he mentioned that the wait time in Central Florida for mental health services are about 4 to 6 weeks. And I believe that
Mm-hmm.
that time frame has increased. And also it makes it difficult because if individuals are looking for a provider who looks like them, that wait time is
Mm-hmm.
even longer.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is opportunity for more counselors to come, and more counselors of color to come. And it's definitely an opportunity to pull individuals like yourself, like Charles, that offer mentoring, that can hold the space for conversation as a face to, okay, I can hold the space for you, I can have a conversation, here's mentoring, until we're able to get you to that point. And so I thank you all for what you do. You all have halos over your heads because we have to have individuals that have compassion, that understand that it's needed, and to be able to hold the space. So I appreciate you all as well.
Well, thank you.
Can
Thank
you
you.
also speak to Point to Pink before? I want to make sure you get that in.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And so we have an initiative. It is a minority women's mental health with a faith-based component that pushes the awareness of challenges that women of color, Black women, face every day. And so we have a journal that is set to uh, be released at the top of next year in January. And it's essentially a spiritual component and a mental health component meshed together with lots of love and lots of awareness. So I'm hoping that um, we'll be able to connect with lots of women, especially women who lead households, to empower them and support them through their own spiritual and mental health journey, so we can empower them to support the children that they care for.
Okay. Well, before we leave, we need to have you give out your information in case someone wants to use your services and want to be able to reach out to you. And so, how can we reach you and how can we find you?
Okay, so the website is www.fullcirclefloridamentalhealth.com. And there is a contact page. If you put your information in, we will reach back out to you. And that is a way that you can connect. We have Instagram, and our Instagram is at It's Full Circle for Me.
Uh,
Yes.
okay. Do you have an email? Do you have an email?
The contact page will allow us to capture
Okay.
all of information, and
Mm-hmm.
it also allows us to have the email to and the telephone number to return the call, or return the contact card. So I think that's the best way to reach us.
Okay. All right. All right.
Oh,
If
Charles.
this is for, oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, before you go, anyone who watches this, so I have a nonprofit, founder of nonprofit, and then I also offer individual and family counseling. We also have parent support groups, and so if anyone who watches this, I am through my practice am offering 45 uh, 45-minute, $45 sessions for first generation counseling recipients. And so, if you are a first generation person who's never received counseling, and you are watching this and you've always wanted to connect with a provider who looks like you, um, and you just don't know where to go, and you're like, oh, it might be too expensive. Generally, counseling sessions are anywhere from $100 to $150. This is specifically for first generation counseling recipients. And so if you reach out, and you have a code, you can reach out on the contact page. I will honor that. And if it's not me, I will definitely connect you with someone. So please do reach out. If you've ever wanted counseling and you've never had it, you always thought it was for those other folks, reach out and we will get you set up.
Well,
Well, I just wanted to ask, I'm sorry, is that for adults, 18 and older? Because if they're under 18, what do they need to do, or is it any differently?
Well, the parents would need to reach out on behalf of the child, or they can
Okay,
put their parents' information. I'd be glad to have a conversation with their parents as well.
okay.
mm, wow, that's some that's some good stuff there. That's some real good stuff. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. Um, it sounds like you need to be a regular based on what's going on. Hopefully, we you can come back because there's so much to talk about, especially when it comes to mental health. And I've actually, in the past, I have done, and you can never do this enough. And maybe this can be part of it, but um, maybe we can talk about the whole stigma of, well, you must be crazy going to see a counselor, or I'm uncomfortable seeing a counselor because in our culture that's not what we do. And why is it that I got to tell you my business? That whole thing of how we, what's going on. So maybe we can talk about that and how to break through those barriers as well. So hopefully you'll have some time to come back and talk to us. And I appreciate you.
Yes, definitely a pleasure.
Well, Miss Captain, Miss Perkins, is there any last words that you would like to say before we get out of here?
I'm always appreciative of the opportunity to share and learn and grow myself because every conversation just gives me more tools to hopefully be more effective in what I do. And you're right, it is a calling. It's a tough job, but I always say I'm not trying to be the best teacher or the most popular teacher. I'm just trying to help these young adults on their journey to walk across that stage and hopefully go on to something productive. But I will say that besides my faith and contributing all whatever success I have with them to God, is just some basic listening and having compassion. You can make a difference with just starting there. And certainly, I do pray for my kids. I call them my kids and all of that, even the knuckleheads. And I do try to separate the behavior from who the person is. So when they act out, I try not to take it personally. And I try to share that with other teachers. Like, they didn't wake up to have this type of day. So thank you, both of you, as always, to continue to learn and grow and be equipped because it is tiring some days. We have to be recharged. And, I had a moment, I was like, why do I teach?
Yeah, well, you and I,
But
we always have this conversation, and that is, you only know what you know. you
yeah,
only
so
you,
thank
you only know what you know, and I told you this and real quick, and you done heard this story 1,000 times, and it kind of reflects of on the radio talking about relationships. I have a couple of females there, and I'm the guest on the show, and a few males, and we're talking about relationships, and we're talking about abuse, and da 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 da.
you.
Da. The girl calls in, she's there and saying it very proudly too. Well, it's okay if you get hit, but as long as you get your licks in too. And everybody just looked at each other, and it's like, you only know what you know. So we were trying to have that conversation. No, it's not okay to get hit and be because you get your. But anyway, that's a whole nother show.
Another show.
That is.
That's a whole nother show. But I say that and thank you so much for taking the time to come on the Journey 2020. All right, mental health. Wow. Yeah, that's a challenge, especially in our culture, in our society, because it takes passion, it takes people that care, it takes people that are concerned to not be so judgmental and to not go the easy route. See, the easy route is to body slam you and to drug you and to shoot you up so you like this. So you don't have to comply. We get nothing out of you when we drug you. That's it. So we good now. Go ahead. Because we like this. That's the easy way. But that's who we are. This is the Journey 2020 where we come to you every Monday at 7 p.m. And for questions, comments, or concerns, you can always hit us up with an email. Um, you may have a show idea, something that you would like to talk about, or you may have some questions. You may like to get in touch with some of our guests and so on and so forth. You know. I'm Charles Morris, and as we always say here on the Journey 2020, faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of the Lord. People, enjoy the rest of the week, and you be blessed.